Have you ever really stopped to think about what is life all about? What am I really supposed to be doing in this life? Well, my friend, as a pastor, as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, I often ask myself, what are you really up to? What are you supposed to be doing? And then I remind myself of the admonition that the Apostle Paul wrote to his son in the faith, Timothy, in 2 Timothy chapter 4. And these were actually Paul's last words, maybe the last chapter that he wrote of all the epistles he wrote in the New Testament. This could be the very last chapter. And he wrote, I charge you, and he's talking to Timothy, in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who is to judge the living and the dead by his appearing in his kingdom. And then here's what he told Timothy: preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, and exhort with all longsuffering and patience. For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own pleasures. And they'll turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths and false philosophies. As for you, always be sober-minded, enduring suffering, do the work of an evangelist, and fulfill your ministry. Well, almost 50 years now in the gospel ministry, that is what I'm supposed to be up to. And I like that one part of the admonition there. He said, be ready in season and out of season. So when it feels good, when it's hot, when it's cold, when it's warm, when it's in between, whatever the season is, be consistent. And then he says three things here: rebuke, reprove, rebuke, and exhort. And so that's what I'm trying to do as we're going through the book of James. That's what I'm trying to do in these pastor chats is, well, sometimes I have to rebuke, I have to reprove, and then I want to exhort. And by the way, I come to the conclusion years ago, as I looked at all the spiritual gifts, that the main spiritual gift that God has given me is the spiritual gift of exhortation. And part of that is to help an individual, especially a believer, to get where he's going in his Christian life, to help you to be spiritually mature. And that's what the book of James is all about. That's the theme of the book of James, is spiritual maturity. You know, so many Christians in the church today and in the Christian world today act like a bunch of babies. And actually, as you go through the book of James, you see 5 things. In chapter 1, baby Christians are impatient in difficulties, chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Chapter 2, they're talking, but they're not living out the truth. They say they have faith, but they're not really living out that faith in their works. In chapter 3, they have no control over their tongue and cause a lot of problems with everyone around them. In chapter 4, they're fighting and they're coveting. They're fighting and they're coveting. You ask, but you have not, because you ask amiss that you might consume it on your own lust, chapter 4. And then chapter 5, where we are now, and we'll be looking at this week, that is chapter 5, the immature believer, he covets and collects material toys. He lives for the riches of this world, knowing not that one day they'll burn up. So these are the marks of a immature believer, Christian, acting like a baby. But my friend, we need to know how we can grow in grace and faith. And so that's what we'll be looking at the next few days as we look at the book of James, chapter 5. And the chapter starts out, come now you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. So all of a sudden, James is, he's rebuking and he's reproving those that are in the church that are using their riches for themselves. He said, your riches are corrupt, your garments are moth-eaten, your gold and your silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and it will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days. And so what a rebuke to those who are using money for their own pleasure rather than using the resources God has blessed them to bless others. Nothing wrong with being rich. God, actually, it is a sign of the blessings of God in many ways. But then to take those riches and become selfish with them and hoard them and then misuse others to get those riches, as we'll see in the following verses, that's what's wrong. And so there's a rebuke there, and there's a reproval there, and there's an exhortation for us who feel like we're knocked down, and that is to be patient because Jesus is coming again. And we're going to see that here in chapter 5. God bless, and you have a wonderful day, and keep your eyes on Jesus despite the troubles all around you. Take care.